Hey, welcome back to Cobb's Cube. Today we're doing brisket, and we finally found a prime brisket up in Pennsylvania, and so we brought it home with us, and we're going to do this for New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, we ran into an issue. We're going to go ahead and show the video all the way through, and at the end, I'm going to tell you what I think went wrong. So let's get started. All right, so we spent a few days leading up to New Year's Eve up in Pennsylvania, and we actually found prime beef, which we just can't seem to find down here unless we go to a butcher and pay twice the price. So I got a 12 pound for $63. It's not too bad, 12 and a half pound. We've had it up in the freezer for about 45 minutes just to make this a little bit easier on the trim out. So let's go ahead and open the package up. That side looks pretty good. We'll start there, and then we'll work our way onto the point side where a majority of the fat is that we're going to leave on. Here we're going to kind of trim off any of the silver skin, etc., and just make this nice and flat coming down. We're going to cut with the grain of the meat, and anything that we cut out, we're going to hold into a bowl because this is all going to be for making burger, sausage, grind. You can also take this fat and go ahead and make your own tallow. I have some Wagyu tallow, so I'm not going to do that today, but I will hold it again for other things that I'm working, like sausages. All right, that's going to be fine for that side. Don't have any big silver skin. Got a little silver skin here. Just going to get rid of it. Good deal. We got that. Let's flip this thing over. So we're going to take this down, we're going to trim across the tomahawk here and just kind of even this out, and then we're going to come back across this backside. So I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch of fat, but I am going to trim off the tomahawk, so there's going to be a little bit there exposed. We definitely want to leave some of the fat, but we want to leave a whole lot. You don't want to give somebody a bite of brisket that's just nothing but fat. Try to make this as even as possible along in here. We're also what they call making the brisket aerodynamic, or about just smoothing it out so it's nice, it's flat, it cooks better, it cooks evenly. It's not got anything to do with flying a plane or anything of that nature. On occasion, I just kind of lift up a little bit, make sure I'm not making contact with meat. It's got a lot of fat along in here. I can feel this, and it's at least a 1/2 inch coming down. So we're going to try to trim some of this fat off as we come along it. All right, she's kind of flat. Obviously, this is a thick piece of meat in this area. And we got a very thin piece of brisket here. And all that's going to happen is this is going to burn. So we want to trim this out. And you think, oh my gosh, I spent all that money on brisket. But you know what? It makes great sausage. It makes great burger. Let's just do this right so we don't end up with burnt brisket. And then, you know, nobody's going to eat it at that point. So I'm going to just trim my flat, basically come right around here like this. And I'm just going to bring this around that edge. And I say, this meat here is going to be great for sausage. But now we've got a really fairly even brisket along those lines. Trim this edge up here. I don't want any edges that are kind of like hanging. I'm try to trim that off so nothing burns. I still want to cut a little bit of that meat in there too. Just like this. This should give us a nice edge presentation. And then we'll trim this edge here. Make it nice and rounded. Round out these edges here a little bit. That'll keep things from hanging. They won't burn. Okay, overall, I think we are good. We get a nice layer coming across here. So we're gonna come back in a little later tonight. This is gonna go on just after New Year's Eve. Since it's gonna be 1 a.m. when I go to put this on, I wanna just give a quick rundown of what we're going to do setup-wise with the Traeger. We're running oak today, and of course this lumberjack. Now, I am not gonna use the bottom rack to place the brisket. I'm actually going to use the top rack, and the bottom rack is really close to the heating element in the center. I like to do fat side up for presentation purposes, so I've found on the Traeger it actually cooks better when I put the brisket on the top rack. So later when we see that occur. Now we know why it's set up in this configuration, and I just put the other pan in there as a drip pan. So we're going to run slow tonight, about 200 degrees, and that'll make sure that probably hit 170 around 7 or 8 a.m., something along those lines, so I'll get a good night's sleep. All right, most of the time, we like to use 16 mesh black powder with kosher salt. However, we're going to change it up today. Today, we're going to go ahead and try the Bearded Butcher's black seasoning. We'll give that a try. Now, I know it has sea salt in it, but I recently did a rib roast with it and didn't feel like there was that much salt in it. So I am going to go ahead and put some kosher salt on the brisket, and then we'll follow that up with the Bearded Butcher blend. And again, I think as I said in one of my last videos, I didn't get a shaker, but this method here works really well. It gets a good covering. Okay, once we get that side good, let's give it a quick shake off. Again, we're going to hit it with a little kosher. Now with this coffee and molasses, this should be a very interesting take on a brisket. And I'm not opposed to trying something new. We're going to go ahead and let this rest while we go ahead and fire up the Traeger. All right, it's 1 a.m. We're going to get this on. Put the point right in the middle, with the flat toward the end because that's where most of the heat is. We're going to go ahead and place our probe in. We're going to shoot for 170 right now and try to get this up to a point to where we can wrap it in the morning. And then I have an extra smoker tube that's been going for about 10 minutes. You can get that extra smoke on the Traeger. So we'll see you at 7 a.m. All right, it's a little after 7 a.m. and our brisket is ready. You're at 170 right now. It's not a bad mark. It's interesting to see how this Bearded Butcher's black blend goes. I'm going to use some beef tallow, Wagyu beef tallow. Spread that out. Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Just nuts. Pull it in nice and tight. That's one thing about the paper, you want to make sure they're nice and tight. Pull the edge up and over. I do double wrap. Okay, another thing to know, fatty side is down right now. Fatty side is up. That's what we want when we're there. We're gonna go ahead put this over and under and just make that tight like that. So now let's go ahead and put this back on the Traeger. Put our probe back in, set that like that, and we're gonna go until we reach 203, or we'll jiggle it at that point. All right, we've hit the temperature. One thing I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let this rest like this and cool down. Right now we're at 203 degrees. Once we're down to about 180 degrees, probably in an hour or so, I'm gonna go ahead and fire up our Smoking It smoker. And one of the nice things about the Smoking It smoker is I can go down to I can go to 0 degrees. I'm going to go to 150 degrees and just set it, and then place the brisket in here and use this as the warmer. Yeah, this is going to be a decent tasting, well, hopefully decent tasting brisket. We saw that the bark wasn't as dark as what we typically like, but we tried something different. So, you know, sometimes you don't get the same results, but maybe that flavor is amazing. So we just won't know. We'll look at it later this evening. So we're going to go ahead and let this rest like this, and then we'll go ahead and get this in the Smoking It smoker and let it rest for the rest of the day. All right, so we've hit 173 during our rest inside, so we're going to go ahead and place this in the smoking it smoker. Again, we hit 173 on the meter. What we're going to take a look at, we've set the smoking it smoker to run a cooking profile of 150 degrees for 10 and a half hours. We're probably going to get about 6 hours today, but nonetheless, this will run for 10 and a half hours. So let's go ahead and we'll open this up. Move it aside just a bit because it's close to the other. We're going to pull out the meter probe, place this in the smoker, and I'm going to go ahead and run a probe down through smoking it little rain cap that it has. Pull that probe, and we'll go ahead and just stick it back in the same hole that we had earlier. Just to keep an eye on this and make sure it stays at 140. Above 140, should I say. Close that back up. Okay, we finally pulled the brisket off of the smoking it smoker that we used as a resting oven, and it's been in there for about 6 hours, sitting roughly at 150 to 151 throughout most of the time. So this should be really good. We're going to go ahead and unwrap this. Jamming crickets. Wow. Well, just that looks good. Okay, so let's take a look and see how we did. The reveal. Wow. Wow, that's juicy. There's no doubt about that. There is so much moisture in that. Oh, I can't wait to take a slice out of this. All right, so let's take a slice out of the flat, and we will see how we did. This is going to be interesting to see how this tastes. All right, we'll try that. That looks like a good cut. Definitely goes. All right, so we're going to taste this. It's an interesting flavor. It's an interesting flavor. I really, really like the Texas style with the black pepper and the salt, and I honestly, I'm missing that right now. There's a good flavor on this. It's not bad. Let me try a little bit of the point here. What we would call the burnt ends. See what that flavor's like. Falling apart. It's good. It's meaty. It's not bad with that coffee and black molasses, but it's not what I want for brisket. I want the pepper and the salt. So we're absolutely going to enjoy this, but I know in the future, I will probably stick with black pepper. So this is phenomenal on the prime brisket. Tomorrow, I'm going to slice a 10-pound set of pork belly and get that curing, and then I'm going to make bacon as maple, and then I'm going to use this on a slab of bacon and try this with bacon, and we'll see how it works there. But as far as the brisket, I think I'm going to stick with the pepper and salt. So with that, we're going to shut this down so my son and I can enjoy January 1st, 2024. We thank you for everybody joining us. Hope you have a wonderful new year. Take a moment to like, subscribe, and have a wonderful new year. Hey, thanks for sticking around. So, what went wrong? Honestly, I was sick when we started this, so I wasn't really concentrating like I should. I threw it on the Traeger and just let it go. I got up when the alarm went off. It went off at 7 as planned. But what I didn't do was take my thermopin and validate the temperature probe from the Traeger. And when it said 170, I just took it for granted that it was at 170. I went and I wrapped it. And then when it said it was at 203, I just took it that it was. I jiggled it, but I jiggled it once it was in the paper, and I really couldn't tell that it was ready. So had I used my thermopin, I really would have known. What happened was the flat looked like it was done just right, but the point meat really hadn't completed, and the fat truly hadn't rendered. We looked at everything else. I don't think that putting it in the smoking it smoker and letting it rest there had any issues. It never went down below 150, and it stayed pretty consistent through that 6 to 6.5 hour rest that it sat there. So that was new, but I don't think that was an issue. I think it really culminated for me not taking the Thermapen, one, and validating the temperature of the brisket, or at least giving it a jiggle outside of the wrap. And so that was a mistake on my part. And I've done numerous briskets, both on the Ag and the Traeger. The Traeger has come out fine in the past, but this one, it was a fail. So it had nothing to do with the rub. That's all on of its own. But I think it was simply me. And I figured I might as well go ahead and make this video so that you see sometimes, as much as we plan to give you the best information possible and show how to do things that always work for us, sometimes we fail. And this time I did.